John in Stratford, Ontario. Hope to get down to some place there myself this summer. Go ahead, please.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. And I sometimes see you walking the streets there.
I love it. It's a high point of my summer, getting down there. Thanks for calling.
Hey, listen, guys, I'm interested in Dave's take on the forest industry moving forward, say 3 to 5 years, and in particular, not the paper industry, but the producers of lumber. Just his overall take on that industry, and is there any one particular stock or maybe two stocks that he's got his eyes on?
What about yourself, John? Did you sort of ride the lumber stocks down? Have you been hurt by them over the past year or so?
No, you know what? I sold maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm just starting to look to see if there's something there that I might invest in. I've got one stock that I've invested in, and I'm just seeing if there's something else out there that might be intriguing for myself.
Thanks a lot, John.
Stay well.
Okay. So, John, look, everybody's got their strategy. And my strategy is looking for groups that are showing signs of positive revaluation. In other words, where multiples are starting to go up, where earnings are starting to accelerate, where we're seeing positive change. And I'm not a value investor, right? So the value investor steps into the group that's been crushed, isn't necessarily doing it because they see something changing for the better. Probably things are still getting worse. And the forest products group really has been difficult from a fundamental standpoint. It's been difficult from a price perspective. It's really underperforming the market. And I think that you probably can afford to wait and see some kind of a turn before you step into these things. So that would be my strategy. I think that we have a market that's trading virtually at highs in the S&P. TSX is not far from its highs. There is virtually no participation coming from this group. I think that you've got limited capital. Focus it in things that people care about now.
You wouldn't, I mean, if we could just pull up maybe a 1 year for West Fraser timber, because the lumber price has begun to come back, admittedly because they're shutting mills, things have been so bad. That wouldn't convince you that we're at the turning point.
I just haven't seen what I need to see that we're at a turning point here.
WFT.
Now, you know, like if I take, like I said, I take the resource group as a whole, or commodities are trading at a relative low versus the S&P that goes back sort of 15 years. So the group is underowned and unloved. What I care about is seeing which groups within there are the relative outperformers. Because if they're outperforming at the beginning, they likely will continue to outperform, which is why I'm focused, for instance, right now on the iron ore companies.
That's interesting. Okay. Bill in Barrie, Ontario, good to hear from you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, could I please have David's thoughts on Stryker, and would he buy it at these levels? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the medical device sector has been a leading group now for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And we've been a big proponent. We've talked about Stryker before. We've talked about Boston Scientific, which is another company that we own. And they're interesting for a couple of reasons. It is secular growth, right? The demographics support what these companies are doing. Technology is supporting what these companies are doing. They are very defensible because they're not terribly tied to the economic cycle. Healthcare is the biggest industry in the U.S., and companies are disrupting the way that we do things, and Stryker fits into that. So long as growth continues to perform well, and growth is secular growth does continue to perform well, I like this group. So I own in one of the funds I run, a macro fund, the medical devices ETF, which is IHI.
Okay.
Trading virtually at highs. We own Boston Scientific and portfolios. I think this is a very interesting group. And for those that are concerned about economic growth, I would rather own something here. Than say a broad basket of utilities.
Okay, no problem, Bill. Thanks for that question. Colin in Sarnia, Ontario. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Andy
Hi
and
there.
David. Hey, thanks. My question is about ZEB. I'm going to be backing out of my utilities that I bought last fall, and I thought maybe the bank, especially in July after a Fed decision, might be a good time to start stepping into that, or am I stepping into something else? Thanks.
Look, I think that the banks are very inexpensive. My stance for some time has been I'd prefer to focus in the U.S. banks than the Canadian banks in general. So if you're looking at ZEB, I might look at KBE, which is the S&P Bank ETF, which would be getting you the basket of U.S. banks. When we look at the industries that we think have long secular growth tails, consumer, healthcare, technology, big parts of the U.S. economy. U.S. consumers in really great shape, employment's in really great shape, consumer confidence is in good shape. I think that you might do better in the U.S. banks.
Okay.
I think you're likely to see better dividend growth.
Okay. We have Al standing by in Toronto. He's also thinking about a bank. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, it's TD Bank. Wondering if now is a good time to get in, or do you see more downside or more upside? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So if I got to pick a Canadian bank, TD would be one that I would choose.
Okay.
Okay. I think that TD's U.S. exposure is very attractive.
Right.
I think that you're likely to see pretty good dividend growth here. It's been a relative outperformer, and so this is one that I would focus on if I were buying a Canadian bank.
And what attracts you, broadly about TD Bank?
Well, TD's done a really great job in the U.S. Right, and I think that is something that is very interesting because I do like the U.S. economy over the Canadian economy. So TD really would be my first choice.
Okay. Stay tuned. Past picks are coming up next. Date did just fine on Shopify, but drum roll, would he stick with the high-flying stock? That's next on Market Call.